Hello everyone, I'm back today with another video, and this is going to be a video of the Round 1 North American Stratego Federation Championships. And this is going to be a game between Maelstrom, and this is Zach21. It looks like the game is started, so let's go ahead and get underway. But this is a Round 1 game. The pairings were randomized for this tournament. So it is 6 rounds, Swiss Perfects. There are 50 players, and Maelstrom and Zach happen to be matched up against each other in the first round. So this is quite a treat of a game. This is two powerhouses and two players who'd probably be favored to take the title overall. But they are facing off against each other in the very first round. So this is an amazing game to be able to watch. Of course, we have Maelstrom here in blue and Zach in red. So we are going to see how this game progresses. So if you've got some aggression by Maelstrom on the left side, he comes in with a major, and Zach recaptures with a general. So Zach's general very accessible there, very risky for Maelstrom to just shoot in to Zach's setup with a major like that. But I know these guys do play each other quite a bit, so I'm sure that their game here today is going to be at least somewhat informed by all of those dozens, probably hundreds of games they've played against each other. So I know these guys might have to try new and different things that are not in the norm or what you would normally expect from them on an average game. So we have Zach's general here. And we've got Maelstrom with that revealed captain on the left side, being this piece, of course, and then this piece came up after Maelstrom lost that major. So he's down a major, up a lieutenant from Blue's perspective here. But Zach has moved some pieces on that right side, but he has not been aggressive with them. And that's going to be a very good get for Maelstrom there. That's two majors in these front two columns. On the front, starting six pieces in the left and middle column. So now Zach's coming down with that piece. Maelstrom's going to sit that major there. Wow, that's another good get for Zach there. He takes that captain back, and we're back to the situation we were before. So both majors, they're getting a captain. And it looks like we're going to have a trade between those majors. There we go. So Zach, happy to get that major off the board. Maelstrom, for his part, happy to sit that major there in the face of Zach's unknown piece coming down. That makes you think that major might have some backing of sorts. So something to keep an eye on as this game progresses. But we've got definite fireworks coming out the gate here. We wouldn't expect anything less from these players. So Zach's going to scout a minor there. Maelstrom will be pretty happy about that. I'm getting Zach to use a scout there, but both players being very reserved with their scouts. You can see a lot of aggression with majors, captains, and not so much the use of scouts. These guys, again, know one another's play style. They know their tendencies, and that's a good get for Zach there. I'm assuming for Maelstrom that'll be backed. And indeed it is. That's the third major. So we have two starting six piece major positions for Maelstrom on the left and the middle. And then we have a major on the second row for Maelstrom on the right side. And then there's a captain discovered. So Maelstrom has two captains and a major known, and Zach a general. So we'll see what Zach is able to do with that more varied information. But of course, he doesn't know any colonels, doesn't know marshal, general, anything like that. So Zach's going to come down with a scout, and they're going to trade those off. So Maelstrom's got that major and captain sitting together there. And of course, he's got the captain here. Zach's general in a very apparent spot. Something to potentially keep an eye on. I believe it was these two pieces that were the pieces that guarded that major that Maelstrom was happy to let sit in his setup in the face of Zach's unknown piece coming down earlier. So something to keep in mind, these two pieces here. And then that's Maelstrom's major, I do believe. He's going to get a chance to scout that, and it's a colonel, so that's a very good find with just his third scout of the game. Just incredible. I think it's incredible that players who are very strong like Maelstrom can play so effectively using so few scouts. He's already found the general and the colonel, and he's used 3 of his scouts. Wow, big risk from Zach there, but it's going to pay off, at least so far. But now he's going to take that major. You've got to think that this is probably a good piece for Maelstrom, and it appears to be. It's the marshal. So that's the same piece that guarded that major earlier, and it's going to take the colonel on the other side now. So that allows Zach's general to get very aggressive here. That's going to be the captain that Maelstrom had. So that's a bit of a tricky situation to be in if you are Maelstrom. You are up that colonel, but you're down 2 majors, and I don't think this general is stopping anytime soon. So for Maelstrom to even use that marshal on that colonel, you've got to figure a general trade is probably coming here pretty soon, unless this is maybe a scout and there's no other opportunity for him to get pieces. Let's see what develops out of this. Okay, he's going to scout a bomb. That makes sense. Maybe the rest of these are bombs. I thought this had moved, but I could be wrong. Maelstrom's going to hit in the center, get a piece off the board in the form of that lieutenant. Zach's going to hit, and that's a general trade. Wow, so maybe that general didn't move. But what that tells you is these might be 3 bombs in a row here or something to that effect. Because Maelstrom was in no rush to trade that general. He was happy to let Zach hit some of these pieces if he so willed. Well, this is going to be a very interesting game now at this point. We have Zach down that colonel, and he's up those 2 majors. And this captain here is known of Maelstrom and as well as the marshal. But I don't believe Maelstrom has any information. So I think if I'm playing this game, I think I would rather be Zach at this point. And there's that miner going to get off the board. That's a good get for Zach Sargent. I think if I'm playing this game, I would rather be Zach, but it's very close. And of course, Maelstrom is an excellent player, so this game could go either way. I do feel that Maelstrom has had a little bit more of the aggressive tendencies on this game, although Zach was able to attack very effectively with that colonel, and then even with that general on the left side to get that captain to even up the tally of captains there. So we'll see how Zach is able to use that information advantage of that captain, which I believe is now running away, as well as that marshal in the center. See how he's able to use that info advantage and maybe pick off some of those smaller pieces. The best thing he could do would be to get one of Maelstrom's colonels, but I think that's going to be a very tall order. That would make Zach the almost certain winner if that were to happen. But if he's able to get some of those captain, lieutenant, sergeant, so they're going to give up a sergeant here, it does appear. So that simplifies the board a little bit further. I believe that was the known sergeant that took out the miner here. And now we have this piece moving across the board. It's chasing the captain against this apparent wall of bombs. Bit of a risk there for Maelstrom to move next to that piece. I believe that's an unknown piece from Zach, but of course it's not the spy. That would be a very bold spy. That'd be an amazing play if that were the spy. Now we do see a moving piece here, so Maelstrom taking a bit of a risk, letting Zach potentially hit that. That makes me think it's probably a low value piece. Maybe a scout or sergeant would be my guess if Maelstrom were to leave that sitting there and allow Zach's general to take it. But now the marshal is chasing that mystery piece. I suspect this would be a pretty low piece in the center, maybe just to test what comes down from Zach's side. But Maelstrom assuming a very aggressive posture with his marshal there, chasing both of these pieces back. I don't see a reason. I don't believe either of them are known, so I believe in theory they could both be the spy. Of course, an aggressive general on this side might indicate a spy being a little bit more likely to be on that side. But it's tough to make a call just based on that. But Maelstrom is oftentimes someone who will make calls based on his reads, even in very important tournament games. He'll take what seem like huge risks, and that's because he has a call, has a belief in terms of where that piece is. So he's probably got a read, I would guess, on Zach's spy, or at least believes that it's not one of these 2 pieces, even if it is a couple different options. But we're seeing here Zach apply some really good pressure on the left and on the middle. Of course, these pieces on the right side. Okay, wow, that's an amazing pickup for Zach there. I don't know if I see a reason why Maelstrom should come out with a captain. That captain, I believe, came from here, unless it was the captain that was known and had been running away earlier. It's difficult to keep track of pieces on both sides, even though there aren't too many revealed at this point. But a captain is exactly what Zach would want to get with a piece like that. Though if he's not careful here, he might be giving up a piece. If this is a decent piece, he's allowed his colonel to be 2 squared, and now he's going to move next to all these known pieces. This is an amazing development, but he's going to escape with some lotto. That tells me that this is probably a major, and Zach didn't want to give up a piece, so he wanted to take his chances on lotto, suspecting that there would be bombs here. Maelstrom's going to move in with a miner. He's going to find a captain. I have to say, at this point, this game is not going Maelstrom's way. Being down 2 majors and a captain, as well as 2 miners. This is going to be a very tricky game. He is up that colonel, so if Zach has an open flag, he's always going to have a chance no matter what. But he is now beginning to be down enough pieces where you have to be very concerned, I think, if you are Maelstrom. We've got a colonel here, and my read would be this is probably a decent piece, unless Zach really just did not want to give up a piece, and even if it's a lower value piece, and decided to lotto based on the odds of these being a cluster of bombs here. But he is going to pick up a sergeant there of Zach's, who's going to be up a sergeant now at this point, with that lieutenant that I believe was here, Marshall here accompanying it. And there, of course, is the captain of Zach here. Colonel, my guess would be something in the vicinity of major. I would say a second colonel, but he only has one colonel left, so maybe vicinity of a major. A piece that he was willing to risk lotto with this colonel to not give up this piece. And Zach's marshal still unknown. Zach looks like he might come down and try to lotto with this captain here. Indeed, that appears to be exactly what he's doing. So Maelstrom's marshal is going to come back. Doesn't like the look of that at all, but he's waited enough moves that Zach is going to get a hit in with this captain, and he's going to find a bomb. I know Zach won't be thrilled with that, but he did get a bomb, or he did get a captain with that colonel earlier. But that is 2 bombs discovered now of Maelstrom. And I know he can have very tricky bomb formations. I wouldn't be surprised if there were 3 pieces bombed in and 4 bombs right here with these 3 bombed in. So Zach, I think, would be doing a very huge risk if he were to lotto any of these pieces here, although it's frustrating to lose a captain like that. But he's still up 2 majors, and he's down a sergeant, up 2 minors. And there's a moving piece there from Maelstrom. So this game looks a little better for Maelstrom having gotten that captain back. But now this suspected major, I would say, at least in terms of how I was reading it, it could be really anything. But that's just based on the colonel rather deciding to lotto rather than allow the marshal to go after this piece. Looks to me like Maelstrom is begging Zach to hit this piece. He's excavating around it, but this is possibly a necessary piece, maybe even a colonel that Maelstrom is trying to bring out. But I would not trust a lotto of any of these pieces for the life of me if I'm Zach in this situation. But Maelstrom does have a situation now where his marshal is trapping Zach's colonel, so he does have 2 colonels to Zach's unknown marshal. So if he plays it right, he might be able to provide some pressure against Zach's, this cluster of pieces of Zach. But it is harder to do that when there's a cluster. It's easier to do that when those pieces are spread around. This game is developing some more nuance now as we see Maelstrom develop some more pieces, restrict Zach's colonel, get that captain back. If I'm Maelstrom, I'm feeling a little bit better, but I think I'd still rather be Zach in this situation. But if I'm Zach, I really want to trade off colonels in this situation, which Maelstrom isn't letting me do. And we have a scout. That is a masterful scout there from Maelstrom. Not a colonel in the slightest. He is going to snipe the spy and reveal a major with 1 blow of that scout. It goes to show you that preservation of scouts I mentioned earlier. Maelstrom still has another scout that he might be able to use to find the marshal, but he's already taken the spy. The good news for Zach is that Maelstrom's marshal is a little bit tied down in trapping this colonel, and that Zach's colonel becomes mobile if Maelstrom decides to take advantage of the fact that Zach's spy is gone. So it's a bit of a complex situation here. We'll see how it continues to play out. Maelstrom now going to chase this piece of Zach in the center. I do believe this was the major, but it's hard to keep track of both pieces. But one of these 2 is the major that took that scout that had taken the spy. That was an amazing scout play by Maelstrom. If I'm Zach, I still like the fact that I'm up 2 majors and I'm up 2 minors. Even if I don't have that spy, because the marshal is known, and trading marshals, you want to get some value out of your marshal if you're Zach, but trading marshals is not the worst thing in the world. Okay, we're going to see Zach lose a minor. That helps Maelstrom a little bit there. Let's see. No, he does not take that piece of Zach, so wondering what some of these pieces are from both players now. That's a colonel that's going to hit a lieutenant, so Zach using some of those small pieces to pick up some info. Finding the colonel's good. I don't know if I would love to lose a lieutenant for that, but he is out of scouts, which is not Maelstrom's situation. So I assume Maelstrom looks like he's going to trade this colonel off now. And of course, Maelstrom's other colonel will be unknown. So I think this game is much more towards parity than it was maybe 5 minutes ago or so, before Zach lottoed that captain on that bomb. And then he's gotten that spy. He's also picked up a minor and a lieutenant. So we're going to have a situation where Maelstrom's marshal is known, but his second colonel will be unknown. 1 of Zach's 2 remaining majors is known, and Zach's marshal remains outstanding. So we've got that colonel trade there. Makes sense for Maelstrom. Zach doesn't have a lot of moved pieces at this point, so there's not, I don't think, a whole lot of advantage to Maelstrom trying to use both kernels at once. The Marshal isn't really going to have a problem defending if it has to defend one single piece. So getting those kernels off the board makes sense. And now I think it's a question of what sort of value can Maelstrom get out of his kernel, and what sort of value can Zach get out of his Marshal? And the answer there is none. Zach is going to trade off those Marshals. Looks like he's going to feel more secure in trading those Marshals off because his spy's off the board. Doesn't want to deal with a fearless Marshal. And I think Maelstrom's second kernel is unknown, so Zach's majors are going to have to be pretty cautious here. Okay, captain there. Now that's actually a really good play from Zach to bring out the captain, because he's recognizing Maelstrom has no majors left. So there's no danger to that captain except the kernel. So that's a lower risk way to potentially find the kernel by bringing down a captain. Because if you lose a captain, that's not good, but it's survivable because you still have both of those majors left. Whereas if you lost one of the majors, I think in Zach's position, you would be in a lot of trouble. So very good play there by Zach. Very, very smart to bring down that captain, I would say. But it's going to be a question of where is Maelstrom's kernel and can he get any value out of it. A major would be, again, an amazing pickup. But that's going to be a very difficult thing to get. And it looks like Maelstrom's opted for a bit more of a conventional setup. None of these ended up being bombs except this one piece, which I feel like, based on seeing a lot of his recent games, is actually kind of a surprise to me that he only had one bomb here. I've seen a lot more clusters of bombs. But I do believe that is Zach's known major here on the left. From Maelstrom's perspective, that of course is a captain. This is a lieutenant, and I don't know what these three pieces are. That one just moved from behind the bomb. If these are known, I've forgotten them from Maelstrom. So again, that kernel, the question is going to be where is that kernel, and is it going to be able to pick up any pieces? Zach doesn't have a spy, of course. He doesn't have any scouts left either. So unless he's able to simply read the kernel at no cost and be correct about it, he's going to have to give up something to be certain about that kernel. It's going to hit, and it's a captain trade. So I don't know if that captain was known or not, but that captain trade seems, I don't think that terribly benefits one player or the other. I think if I'm Zach, I'm fairly happy about that captain trade there. But Zach is down a lieutenant, so he's going to want to try to maybe get this lieutenant back if he can, but I'm sure Maelstrom's not going to make that easy. Of course, you can see these scores here. This is the adding up of all of the piece values. They're very close. Maelstrom with a 2-point advantage, which is literally the value of his one scout here. Okay, so Zach is not going to believe that bluff of that scout. He's going to call that immediately and take that piece. I think that scout came from here, and I think this piece was the one behind the bomb. I don't remember exactly, but that scout is gone. So actually, we're kind of equal on the scores now, as I was just mentioning about that scout. So we've got the major here, which was already known, called that bluff scout of Maelstrom there. We have an unknown piece that was kind of threatening that lieutenant, and potential showdown here on the left side. Going based on the most obvious option, this would seem to be Maelstrom's kernel, but because it's the most obvious option, I'm inclined to say it might not be the kernel. It could be a back row kernel, by all means. It could be any one of these back row pieces. And I think Zach, by taking that scout, I believe that scout started here, so Zach was assuming that this was not the kernel. If that's true, and I remember that correctly, that would be a pretty risky play. Obviously, it turned out well, but I think any one of these could be the kernel, frankly. Zach, the name of the game for Zach is, again, going to be to find it at the lowest cost possible. And certainly not to give up a major for it. And that is the kernel. That is the kernel from the corner. So after Zach took this scout, which started here, Maelstrom realized he is probably going to call my quote-unquote bluffs or take any piece that starts in the back. So we moved up with the kernel from the back row. And that's exactly the type of player that Maelstrom is. Exactly what I was saying. Would not at all disbelieve a back row kernel. So now Zach is in a very, very difficult game situation. He is potentially going to lotto with this piece or one of these pieces because he's only up one major now for that kernel, and then he's also down a lieutenant and a sergeant, so he's going to have to get some pieces back, and he only has one major to lotto with, so his ability to lotto itself is going to be reliant on Maelstrom allowing his major access to some of these pieces. But it looks like either this isn't the major or he's going to opt to not lotto. If I'm Zach, maybe I shuffle around the lake with my major here. I'm not sure. It's a bit of a tough call. There are only 3 minors that Maelstrom has, but again, there's only so many flag spots here, and I doubt all 4 of these are bombs. Okay, so he's going to give up one of those miners to find the lieutenant. That's good news for Zach. I might put a little bit more weight in that run around the lake strategy after getting one of those miners. That, of course, is a known lieutenant from Maelstrom, if I remember that correctly. And we have this piece here, not known, and then, of course, the colonel. And I would have to say this is likely the major at this point then. So if I'm Zach, I probably try to shuffle around the lakes at this point because I'm not going to win. I don't trust myself to win on material. On paper, it's technically possible that the major could hold the colonel at bay, and the two miners advantage that Zach has might be able to match up against the lieutenant and the sergeant that Maelstrom has, but that's almost impossible to achieve. And I think in that sort of situation, you would see the colonel run away from the major, or said another way, not care where the major goes and go help trap those miners, which could potentially end in a draw for Zach if Zach is able to lotto, or I'm sure Maelstrom would move up one of the miners and save it or move it around, run it away from that major. So this is a very, very tricky spot for Zach to be in. Looks like that major is moving up the column, so of course it was always able to run around the lakes, but it's escaped. Oh, but that is the major. Okay, that makes things a little bit more interesting. So another good bluff in turn from Zach. I was pretty sold on this probably being the major, but it was not. I wonder maybe if this is a minor then. That was attempting to maybe go for the flag. So that makes this game a little more interesting. Let's see. So Maelstrom is up a colonel. He's down a major. And he's up a sergeant. One lieutenant remains on the board. But that lieutenant of Zach is known. Maelstrom's lieutenant, I don't believe, is known. And he's up that extra minor, but he's down to, sorry, he's up that extra sergeant, that is Maelstrom, is up the sergeant, but he's down those two minors. Losing that lieutenant actually makes this a pretty even game at this point. So I'll be very interested to see. This is going to be, I would imagine, a pretty tough endgame. It looks like Zach putting himself in a potential position to lotto with this lieutenant here. Of course, the colonel is keeping the major at bay. But it looks like Zach is not committing to that lotto with his lieutenant. But this could be very tricky for Zach because Maelstrom does have the dominant piece, which of course is that colonel. And he's only got two miners left, but if he has a good read on the flag, for example, if he thinks this is simply a tripod, it's going to be very difficult for Zach to stop that because the colonel is going to be able to force the major out of the way, or at least to one side. And if he's able to trade lieutenants, already knowing the identity of this lieutenant, his sergeants might be able to provide a pathway for the minor to go up to the flag. So this is certainly not a closed book of a game on either side. A lot of twists and turns in this game. I pretty decently preferred Zach in the early mid-game, and then heavily preferred Maelstrom just a couple minutes ago. But getting a minor and getting a lieutenant changed the complexity of this game a little bit. So we see that piece of Maelstrom moving in, and now it looks like he's going to try to escort a miner up the right side. At least that's what logic would tell you. It could be a sergeant that's fishing for a miner of Zach to hit him. Wouldn't put that past Maelstrom at all. He has more sergeants than miners after all. Something to potentially note, I would not be surprised if Maelstrom actually had one of his miners trapped behind bombs, or one of his sergeants rather. Miners is possible too. I was thinking sergeants. That would not surprise me if there were some pieces trapped, especially on Maelstrom's side, potentially on Zach's side as well, but I do know that is something that Maelstrom can tend to do. So we're at a very, very tense position in this game right now. Could go either way. Looks like both players are letting their counterpart advance as they wish onto their side with those mystery pieces, and then you see both of them move away as if to say neither of those pieces from either players are actually the miners. It's a fascinating situation. So we've got the lieutenant here, and I believe that would have to be the major then. For Zach, it is hard to keep track of these pieces. I believe the colonel was here. And you would figure that if Zach was worried about this tripod, he probably would have ventured over his major to stop it. But of course he didn't, and perhaps that is, if that is actually a minor from Maelstrom, which I'm not convinced about, perhaps that is going a bit into his hesitancy to hit this apparent tripod here. It's a fascinating game. So Maelstrom's going to move next to that corner piece. I'm inclined to say that's probably a sergeant at this point. It could very well be a minor, but my instinct is telling me that Maelstrom is probably trying to fish for a minor trade that he didn't get. And that piece is going to retreat now. It's an incredible game between these two players. especially Zach being able to bring this game back to parity. Very impressive for him. Now he's going to come over with this piece. He's going to realize that that can't be any stronger than a sergeant. Oh no, that is Maelstrom's last lieutenant. I was mistaken. This is the last lieutenant of Zach that's known. Maelstrom's lieutenant was not known, and it's going to pick up a sergeant. So that appears to me to be a pretty significant mistake from Zach, unless he believed that this was not the lieutenant of Maelstrom. But losing that sergeant is going to put him in a bit of a precarious situation once more. That's not too dissimilar from being down a lieutenant and a sergeant, being down two sergeants with those known lieutenants in this situation. So just based on that play, it's amazing when a game is balanced. It seems like right on a knife's edge, and the loss or gain of any piece, it would seem, can alter the game so severely. But now I would be pretty happy to be Maelstrom in this game situation, up those two sergeants, assuming that none of those sergeants are trapped, which is not necessarily a safe assumption. So we'll see what comes of this situation here. We see that piece from Maelstrom that started, I believe it was here. It's moving over toward this side. Zach is going to threaten this piece in the center with what is likely his last sergeant, although it could be a minor as well. Zach has 4 minors and only 1 sergeant. Of course, his lieutenant being known. All right, so Zach's going to attack with one of those minors. You'd have to think a sergeant is nearby. That would be a big flaw, I think, in moving this piece over. If that were to be, if this piece were not to be taken by a sergeant pretty soon. But even if 1 sergeant's trapped, there's still 2 remaining on the board for Maelstrom, and that's a lieutenant. So it maybe 2 sergeants here, and if there's 1 trapped, that's the only thing I can think of. But Maelstrom appears to be thinking. Again, I would imagine he's going to find a way to pick up a minor here, unless it's going to be just a trade. He may have thought that that was Zach's last sergeant, but that doesn't seem to be a very good assumption to me, given that there's 1 sergeant and 4 minors left. But Maelstrom's going to do absolutely nothing about that minor. So you have to imagine Zach's going to keep going. He's going to find another bomb. I don't think I'm thrilled about this if I'm Maelstrom, but that's probably a sergeant then, indeed. Okay. So he loses 2 bombs, and then there's a 3rd here. So the question, I think, then, is this a tripod here? And then there's a minor here, potentially? Or maybe there's some sort of trickier configuration. But if you are Zach, you are not anymore looking like it's going to be possible to win on the material. So I think it's going to be a question of your ability to run around the lakes and have Maelstrom guess your flag wrongly. But that's going to be difficult when there's 3 bombed in spots and Maelstrom has 2 minors. And I guess it's possible in theory if you take this and it's not the flag, and then if you just hit one of these 2 pieces and you immediately exchange minors, that could leave the other option completely bombed in still. So it's possible for this to be a draw game, certainly. But we'll see what path both players take here to get to that potential situation. But we've got the lieutenant moving around this bomb, threatening this piece. We've got the sergeant here. That's the colonel of Maelstrom. This likely to be a sergeant, it would seem. There's a major and then either sergeant or minor. Lieutenant here, not sure what this one is. So once again, Maelstrom looking heavily favored in my eyes at this point. He's got all the information. He is only down 1 minor and he's up 2 sergeants. So he's up a colonel and 2 sergeants to being down a major and 2 minors. So I think at this point, having taken a sergeant and a minor of Zach, there's not really a way I can see that Zach would be able to win on material. So I think at this point, it's going to be up to Maelstrom to advance this game. And it looks like he might be doing so on the right side. All right, it's got some movement in the opposite direction, so it doesn't look like we're going to see any aggression there. If I'm Maelstrom, I probably just bring up a minor on the right side. There is a chance this piece here is a minor and maybe tries to trap and trade, which is a danger. But it's a little tricky in one way if you're Maelstrom, and that's that this lieutenant could potentially be a threat to these move pieces here if you want to move your colonel, in a way that kind of dislodges this major. So you want to make sure that that lieutenant isn't able to pick up any of these pieces here or be a threat. And if you have an open flag in your Maelstrom, we can't discount that possibility, then your colonel is going to be much more strongly tied to defense than if you're only worried about these moving pieces. Because if your flag is closed, of course, nothing to worry about. But if it's open, you don't want to give Zach, who's clearly in a losing position, an opportunity to lotto it. So that lieutenant there is going to threaten that piece. It looks like Maelstrom is taking steps toward making some aggressive movement here. And that piece now moving up toward the center. I apologize, I've not been able to keep track of all these moving pieces that have been shuffling around. For Maelstrom, I know Major and Lieutenant of Zach. Based on this piece's movements here, it would seem logical it's a Sergeant. I think the Colonel is this one, but I actually don't remember that with full confidence. Okay, it looks like Maelstrom's thinking this is probably a minor, either that or these are 3 sergeants here, and he's gonna either take the minor or looking to trade sergeants. But he's moving against this piece with all of these pieces. Wow, there's a huge cluster of Maelstrom pieces on the left side there. And he's going to let him take it. So that might mean that this might actually be the Colonel instead of this piece. Because otherwise, if I'm Zach, I probably hang my piece around and smash into this group here. But yeah, at this point, getting that minor for Maelstrom, he's just got to find the flag. But if this is his Colonel, like I'm thinking, apologies for the lack of accurate memory, then this Major, I think, at any point did have the opportunity to come down and potentially grab an open flag. So either Maelstrom's flag is closed, or he was just banking on Zach not taking such a risk with his Major at that point in the game. So we're seeing that that Lieutenant much less effective now, I think. Can't clear a path for that minor that had moved. It's got a very central location from a Colonel here, it would seem. And we have this piece advancing. I don't remember the piece's identity if it's known. It once again avoids the flag, or the apparent tripod, I should say. Moves to the back row. And it's going to take that piece, and that is a minor trade, which is exactly what Zach would want. So now, this brings up a very tricky situation. I think no matter what, Maelstrom is going to have a draw. But the question is then, can his last minor find Zach's flag? Could be open, could be closed in some way in this corner area. Can Maelstrom identify the flag? He's probably going to want to use his sergeants, I would think, on some of these pieces here to see if it is a closed flag formation, to determine if he should use his minor on this area. But there's no foolproof way, I don't think, to hit this section without using a sergeant, because if you hit this, it could be a minor trade, and that could be closed. If you hit this, it could be closed here in the corner, and if you hit this, of course, that could be a trade as well, and it could still be closed in the corner. And it could be open altogether. So if you lose your minor without taking any bombs, you've got several pieces to guess with. You've got 3 sergeants, a lieutenant, and a colonel, namely, which is 5 pieces, but it's not 6, not 6 pieces. So it'll be really interesting. Maelstrom definitely favored quite heavily to be able to get this flag, but we'll see if he is able to seal the deal here. Zach's making it difficult, so it's very cool to see this game come down to the wire like that and have some real intrigue toward the end. You might see a little bit of what I call tournament gamesmanship come into play here. You'll notice there is a clock in the upper left-hand part of the screen that has about 36 minutes left. These players have an hour to finish their game. And if they don't finish their game in an hour, then it's a draw. So if you're Maelstrom, you might see him. You can see his advantage on the clock here. He has a few more seconds than Zach. You might see him actually potentially spend a lot of time just moving pieces around and not attacking, and wait until the very last moment to go for the flag. And if it doesn't work out, you can potentially claim the draw. So a little bit of some niche tournament rule application there. But an interesting thing earlier of note, that Maelstrom allowed Zach to potentially move down on this piece. And I don't think he could have guaranteed taking it, because it could have moved between these 3 lanes. But perhaps in conjunction with this lieutenant, it may have been able to trap this piece. I didn't count the squares exactly, but maybe the reason Zach didn't go for that was because his major might end up trapped in Maelstrom's territory. Although it would seem that then the lieutenant of Zach could still run around, and that wouldn't be super problematic. Could just avoid the lieutenant trade. So that might indicate again that it could be open. Perhaps this is a bomb, but I don't want to run too much with that read. But you do see now Maelstrom is down on the time clock. So they're very close together on that time, though. I wonder if it's got to be a thing in the mind of both players, probably, as we near the end of this game. It would seem, at least by material and position, but not necessarily by time. If both players, especially Maelstrom, if Maelstrom is uncertain regarding his ability to find the flag definitively without blowing up all of his pieces on bombs. But Zach's only got 2 moving pieces, and of course 6 bombs and 1 flag for these 9 that are in these back 2 rows. So the chances of a miner finding, at least a bomb is pretty high. But that's a tough call if you're Maelstrom to run some sergeants up and check these pieces. Because maybe these are 2 bombs, and then maybe you send a miner in, and you're able to open this up and guarantee the flag is open, but maybe it's somewhere on this side, all along, and without those 2 sergeants having hit maybe 2 bombs here, it's pretty tricky. Okay, so we do see this piece moving here, something I missed. So that is appearing to be a closed flag then from Maelstrom, and that would have to be the last miner, you would think, and he's actually declining to move it up into Zach's territory at this point. He wants to probably do a little bit more thinking or exploration or determination before doing that. But what you're going to see now is Maelstrom is going to force, it would appear to me, a lieutenant trade. So I believe, I haven't been following these pieces very well, but based on how they're playing it, that would make sense to be the colonel and this to be the lieutenant. Of course, this is likely the minor here, and I think you are going to see Maelstrom force a trade of pieces, particularly these lieutenants if he's able to. Might be a little bit tricky if he has this choke point of this piece here. He doesn't want the lieutenant to be able to escape by running it around this bomb and chasing this piece. He would probably prefer not to sacrifice this piece in the process of forcing a lieutenant trade. So we'll see what Zach is able to do here. I would imagine, okay, Maelstrom's going to move that piece up and apparently allow the lieutenant to escape for now. I think if I'm Maelstrom, I might try to move it down, but I think that could have forced it up either way. But now this is a much less clean situation for Maelstrom, although he's still going to be able to trap that lieutenant along the side, which is good for him because it restricts that movement and it takes Zach just down to the movement of that major being a possibility. So that lieutenant is still trapped. And of course, if Zach were to move his major over to try to release the lieutenant, then that allows Maelstrom to get his colonel involved, exactly what you're seeing now. So this is going to be difficult, I would think, for Zach to avoid in terms of a trade. But I think Maelstrom might have to commit his colonel down. Okay, he's going to let the lieutenant, it would appear. Well, no, this actually still works out for him. Oh, wow, Zach is going to choose to trap his major. That is a fascinating decision. So Maelstrom can move. So he could also, what Maelstrom could do, he could move down, exactly. So he could move up with the lieutenant, and then if Zach moves the major over, he can move over, continue to trap it. Or this, for Maelstrom, is a simpler way of trading off those lieutenants. So he's going to get exactly what he wanted. I have to think that may have been a bit of a mistake from Zach. I think if he moved his major up, that lieutenant would have been harder to trap because Zach's lieutenant could have escaped this way. And if Zach ran his major back quickly enough, he may have caused some trouble for Maelstrom and prevented his use of the colonel and trapping that lieutenant. But I do think trapping lieutenants was inevitable at some point. I think it just came down to Maelstrom getting his pieces in the right position so that they couldn't be threatened or trapped or skewered in any way by the major or the lieutenant. So we've got a very simplified game situation now at this point. A very quick game opening has developed into a very complex endgame. And you see, of course, the colonel of Maelstrom matching up against that major that Zach has. And Maelstrom is simply up 2 sergeants at this point. He has done an excellent job of getting those smaller pieces back. He's played a masterful late mid-game. After giving Zach back that minor and that lieutenant, he has gotten all of the breaks to go his way, except that minor that traded here, which is fine, but it would have been much cleaner if that was even a bomb. and Maelstrom would probably feel a little bit better about his chances to potentially guess at an open flag, but he's discovered no bomb so far. The flag could be in one of two closed locations, and of course there's a number of open flag possibilities here as well. So these are the three sergeants that Maelstrom has that are now occupying each of these lanes. That appears to be the miner that's been sitting out there, sitting down there, I would say, out of the action. Of course, Maelstrom does not want to advance it to a point in the field where it might get trapped by the sergeant or the miner that Zach has remaining. So I think if I'm Maelstrom at this point, I probably want to use at least one of my sergeants to determine if it is indeed the case that there is a closed flag on the left side. But the way that Maelstrom's advancing with this miner now at this point, it seems like he is a little bit more interested on the right side, particularly if he moves the colonel up here. But we'll see which way this miner that's here, if it breaks to the right or to the left. I would say based on the okay, so he's gonna move to the left. I think if I am Maelstrom, I'm probably gonna send in a sergeant to check these pieces. But it looks like Maelstrom maybe has a read, maybe going for it here. And this could potentially determine if this game is a win for Maelstrom or a draw. Okay, a sergeant comes involved now. Can't wait to see how this ends up. I've got that miner in a very forward position. Looks like a sergeant is going to come down now and check out one of these pieces. Got no movement from Zach on any of those. If that major gets any closer, you might want to consider moving your colonel if you are Maelstrom to protect the operation here. Don't want to get your miner in a situation where it can get trapped between a major maybe bearing down on the top, and then if some other piece moves here on the back row or from the side. So Maelstrom considering now the risk he wants to take, and he hits a bomb with his sergeant. Now, if that's the flag bomb, and that means that these are... Actually, no, that is very good news for Maelstrom, because it's going to guarantee that the flag is open, because this is a bomb. Because if this is a bomb, even if that's a moving piece that takes it out, then the flag is open. And if that's another bomb, then, of course, the flag has been opened then at that point. So Maelstrom is going to guarantee that he's going to have access to the flag, because he's going to eliminate now the last closed flag location that's possible. But the question is the flag truly in this sort of tripod here, or maybe in the corner? Let's see. That is the flag. So Zach ran what appeared to be a closed flag set up there, and Maelstrom gets the win. That is an amazing game. Well done to both players. An excellent game. I feel confident just watching that gameplay that I would have lost to both of them if I was playing against them. A very, very fascinating game. Lots of twists and turns, and Maelstrom does come away with the win in the end. So congratulations to him, but this is not the end of the tournament for either player. There will be 5 more rounds, and Zach still has as good a chance as any to end up with the overall tournament win. But well done to Maelstrom. I hope you guys enjoyed this sort of live commentary of this very interesting Round 1 NASF tournament game. And that'll be all for now. See you guys in the next video.